All right, sorry that last segment took 40 minutes. This one will probably take 20. You should have done 2:30s, should have been paying attention. I will in the future. Okay, senior year golf districts were at Holmes Park in Lincoln. The team's home course, my home course. I had played it hundreds of times. Given my performance that year up to that point, I was favored to win that district meet. There were even 20 or so other players watching me warm up. Vince was glowing about taking one of his players to state. A third choke. I shoot 84. My year's average was something under 78. Top 10 go to state. I wasn't close. Vince looked like his dog had died. We were, Sherry and I, members over the years at 2 country clubs in Omaha and 1 in Lincoln. Who'd have thunk we would belong to a country club? Played in a lot of scramble golf tournaments. Scramble is everybody hits off the tee and then you pick the best first shot in order to play your next shot, and so and so and so and so, even on the green. We won all the time these scramble tournaments. John Reinsch was instrumental with that. Adam was instrumental with that for probably a dozen years. I was famous for saying, just once, I'd like to hit a drive like that. And then flying my ball over theirs. What a turd. I think 2 wants to go out again. I'll be right back. These are getting done. Come on, Griff. Go. Go, 2. Go. And 12 seconds from now, they'll want back in. I used to throw a golf tournament. 2 of them, actually. There was the spring blue and the fall blue. Why blue? Vince used to wear a blue sweater like every day. Thus, spring blue, fall blue. I arranged for all the entrants. I funded them, not a huge deal, bought trophies. I just spent some potholder bucks. One time, Bry flew me over the Syracuse Country Club while I filmed, and Love's Theme was playing in the background, just like every weekend's golf tournament on TV. Other sports. Brian and I used to do something called Little Man Football, kind of a sport anyway. It was a variation of football for losers at the yard across the street, which was at Church's. You punted the ball to the other guy, then either tackled him or he scored. I'm pretty sure Bry never scored, and I don't recall ever not scoring. I would either run it in off the kick or let him grab my leg and drag him the length of the field. He was regularly pissed. I'm still proud. Back last time. Let go. Oh, it's so good to be back. Okay. At Pius X High School in Lincoln, in Lincoln, some of you know about that, I played hoops till my knees crapped out sophomore year. I could shoot incredibly well. Shooting for 2 hours a day at home. Rain, literally, or shine, or snow or ice on the driveway contributed. I could also jump like a fiend. I could easily hang on the rim at 5'10", but I couldn't dribble without looking at the ball. Thus making my passing crummy a la my high school career. I was the leading scorer only one time in a game at Pius. We lost 80-12 to Lincoln Northeast, and I had 2 points to lead all scorers on our team, along with 5 other guys who had 2 points. Football, realistically wasn't in the cards. I weighed 135 when I graduated Pius. April of this year, if I had added 18 pounds to my girthiness, I would have weighed double my high school graduation weight. 135 pounds, that's probably what Ryan weighed on a good day when he played freshman ball at Scott. I was a golf pussy. He eventually was a man. Brian and I also played a ton of something we called 8-foot. 8-foot was simply basketball on an 8-foot rim. Thus, we could both jam the bejesus out of the ball, including trying to go over each other, including making our wrists so raw from jamming on that rim. Bry used to wear socks on his arms, bunched down by the wrist, so he didn't inflict too much pain. I played City League hoops. That was probably for about 6 years. My team was called the Second Knuckle Club. And it was called that because Vince was famous for doing this during football games. Second knuckle. I played tennis. Once again, not fabulously, but average, maybe better. I took a tennis class at UNL, and I played in numerous city tournaments in Lincoln. That's about enough sports, for Christ's sake. So, Brother Brian and I were in college. It was the summer before senior year for me. He was 2 years younger. We drove to New York City, upstate New York, a couple other points. The first night we called J&M from South Bend, Indiana. Oh, Steve. I'll be back. Ooh. First night we called them from South Bend, Indiana. They asked if we were stopping and whether we had found a hotel. We answered yes and yes. We were stopping for gas, and we had found a hotel. We just weren't checking in and staying there. By lunch the next day, we were in New York City. Another story from that trip. I was driving home about 8 in the morning. We'd been driving all night. Again, same thing on the way out. Bri was completely zonked in the passenger seat. I was so sleepy, I thought I was gonna freaking die. It was about 50 degrees or so and totally foggy. So I did the smart thing. I rolled down my driver's side window and hung my head out so that the coldish air blowing on my face would keep me awake. One other small thing, I was driving 70 miles an hour, it was an interstate, in the left lane in pea soup fog. When Bri woke up, he about pooed, looking at what I was doing. It had been about half an hour since I started. I said it was completely logical and safe. Only an idiot wouldn't drive in the left lane and crawl along. I was right. All the smart people were crawling in the right lane. Okay, we're getting close to the end of my kids stuff. Sherry and I get engaged. It's within a few days of the wedding. So, of course, you have a bachelor party. Rented out the Knights of Columbus Hall for that bachelor party. The first of many such parties over the years. Not all for me. Several things happened. Of course, we had a keg. After getting good and crocked, we laid 4 8-foot tables end to end. And then we played human shuffleboard. You got a full-on run from the other side of the room and dove and slid as far as you could. I mean, we had beer everywhere. A total mess. So, how can you possibly have a good encore to that? Well, I took the fire extinguisher off the wall and started chasing my friends around, spraying them with that white foamy stuff, which of course ended up everywhere. Place was a nightmare. I never got a call from the Knights of Columbus, nor a bill for cleanup. That's what buddies are for. When I was 16, Father Jim Dawson took us to Washington, D.C., Montreal, and Quebec, Canada. I had just gotten my license 2 weeks before we left. So I'm 16, and it's 2 weeks later, and we go on this trip. We told the parents, and by the way, we're taking along 13 of my cousins and me and Father, 15-person van, one of those stretch deals. So we told the parents that I was going to be driving. To this day, I'm in disbelief. None of them said, "That is the dumbest thing I have ever heard." Putting 14 people's lives in my virgin driving hands. Father Jim didn't drive 1 mile on that trip. What is it, 15? I probably drove 4,000 to 5,000 miles. It's 15 to the coast and back is 3,000. And you got to get up into Canada. Yeah, 4,000 to 5,000. And none of my cousins bitched about this. It was ridiculous. We took a picture with our then representative in Congress, Charlie Thone. Charlie had also been the governor. Father Jim got a black and white copy of that picture. He showed me that picture and talked about that trip every time he saw me until he died a couple years ago. And when I say every time, I mean every time. It was just a running joke among the people that were or are my age, give or take, both sibs and cousins. I find it friggin' hilarious. I don't know what the deal was. I had an experience in college with a young lady. A buddy and I were in a marketing class for summer school. And the first day we walk in, and there's this gorgeous blonde sitting in the front row. So I do what I thought you were supposed to do. I sat down right behind her. And directly behind me is Bill Essay, good buddy in Sherry and my wedding. Now, back in those days, the word for little cuties was nudie. Ooh, she's a real nudie. And so I dubbed her Miss Nudie Dare. There, okay? So we get a couple of weeks into class. I've seen her half a dozen times. We're talking like fiends every day. I tell Essay, today's the day I'm gonna ask her out. And he's excited. Cool. So Just as I'm getting ready to ask the question, she says, blah, 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 blah. My husband, blah, blah, blah. Essay and I look down at her left hand. Sure enough, there's a huge rock there. I'm telling you what, she had no idea why we were dying laughing, but oh my God, we laughed. And all these years later, I kid you not, anytime I see or meet any woman with any level of appeal, the first thing I do is look at that ring finger. A couple of wild sightings of people while we were on vacation. The folks took all us kids to San Francisco one year, driving, of course, 3,000 miles. We're in Chinatown, which San Francisco has a big one. Walking toward us comes a gal named Frida Schubaugh. Frida was our next door neighbor in Lincoln. Neither one of us had any idea we were going to be there. Weird. Perhaps weirder, one of my best friends is a dude named Norm Lund. A client of mine, Bill Cotter, had flown me and 5 rich guys to St. John in the Virgin Islands to look at investing in a beautiful resort. He got a chartered jet that would hold 8. We flew to Boca Raton, Florida, to refuel before the shot into the Virgin Islands. Quite the trip, way over my head. So we're sitting there at dinner the first night, and in exotic parts of the world like that, or Key West, typically the low will be 78, say, and the high will be between 80 and 82, 365 days a year. As a result, a lot of public buildings don't even have windows. In fact, in the Virgin Islands, almost nothing has windows. They just have big awnings out in front of them for if it rains. So we're sitting there at dinner, and I look out on the walking path, and here comes Norm Lund. So I turn to one of the guys that's along with me, Mike May, and I say, Mike, here comes Norm up the walking path with Nancy. Don't even look up. I'm gonna just very much soft pedal this. So as Norm gets about 10 feet away from us, I go, hey, Norm, and go back to looking at the menu. Oh, God. By the way, that one is out of order. That's should come under the section I labeled experiences. I did not do that. College age. So I'm driving down South Street, which is the parallel street to our house 2 blocks up. And I'm speeding 10 or 15 over. And all of a sudden, I notice a cop behind me, and he turned his lights on. So there was a stream of cars coming at me. We lived on a boulevard, so it had that big median thing going down the middle. And I didn't know whether I'd be able to get through that line of cars and run. So I cut just in front of the first car and went up the street the wrong way on the boulevard, the wrong side of the boulevard, took a hard left, got out, threw up the garage door, got in, went back in that space, and about 10 seconds later, this cop goes screaming by me. Obviously didn't look. So I've broken the law. We had 1 year, I remember Di being the ringleader on this, where we found and unwrapped and rewrapped all of our Christmas presents. Another beaut. And lastly, my brother and 3 sisters have talked about being raised by wolves. And what we mean by that is we just didn't have much interaction with Big Jack and Marge. And when I say not much, I'm sure I don't have 24 memories of them talking to me. I may not have a dozen, except for when I was in trouble. So, I mean, it was unreal. And all 5 of us say the same thing. Until you moved out of their house, they had like nothing to do with us. They didn't come to a single event any of us had. They didn't come to Christmas programs. They didn't come to golf meets. They didn't come to basketball games. Di ran track. I mean, it just goes on and on. They had absolutely no interest, no clue. Very weirdly, my dad and I were tremendous friends after I got into my probably mid-30s. It took a while for the pain in my butt from his belts to wear off. But we had a great relationship for the next 30 years. But I mean, it was weird. I'm talking to him all the time for a 30-year stand. And for the 20 years I'm living in their house, it was darn near nothing. Times have changed. I can't imagine, for instance, the McKeans not being involved in their kids' lives. Strange. All right, that's it. As predicted, 30 minutes, part 2, 40 minutes, part 1 of me up to senior year of college. To be continued.